are building a new way. We are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free of hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Strong with love that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without peace, the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. Good morning. Our land acknowledgement this morning is offered by Gary Kaiser. Thank you.
In our commitment to be in right relationship with the descendants of this area's indigenous people, we place a small basket of black oak acorns on the altar each week. May the tribal sovereignty of the Nevada City Rancheria Nissan be restored through federal recognition.
Thank you, Daryl. Our weekly reminder of what we've inherited, all the legacies. I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. If there are seats, let's help people be included. If there are seats near you, would you help people know? There's one right here. Wow, thin. There's also, we have what we're calling as quiet space in the chanting room. Yeah. We started setting up a monitor in the chanting room in the back, so people are calling it the quiet room for some space, so that's an option for folks too. Thanks, people are freeing up some spaces, thank you. So there's some more seats available? Yeah, and as time goes on, if you see people looking, if you'd help them find a spot, thank you. I want to welcome especially our guest speaker today, Daryl Grigsby. Daryl and I served together on the board of Color Me Human, the local organization founded by UUCM member Tracy Pepper, which claims as a mission to fearlessly fight systems of oppression and boldly champion equity and inclusion for all people, serving as a bridge to building a vibrant and empowered community. So inclusion, in fact, is the center of Color Me Human. Daryl's a native of Washington, D.C. He served as the nationally recognized Public Works Director of San Luis Obispo. He founded the Black Writers and Artists of San Diego, has published 4 books, including In Their Footsteps, Inspirational Reflections on Black History for Every Day of the Year. He has served and continues to serve numerous amazing causes. And besides all that, he has a master's in pastoral studies. And a whole lot more. That just skims the surface. You may know him through his letters published in the Union, which always both inspire and inform me. So I think of Daryl as an important prophetic voice in our community, one for which we can be very, very grateful. Welcome, Daryl. We're glad you're here. I invite us to silence our devices, to free ourselves from them for an hour. So if you're not sure if you've turned yours off, it's okay to look and check. It's okay. It's okay to go actually find out. And we're going to greet each other in a moment, but that has different levels of comfort for everyone, right? Both in terms of the greeting and the being greeted. So let's take a breath, because we're going to get ready just very briefly to say hi to people around us. And some of us need more preparation for that than others. So if you center and get still for just a moment and have in mind and heart what you hope will happen in this 60 seconds of saying hello to each other. What's your hope for you and for the people who will talk to you or who you will talk to? Especially in this month of inclusion, what would help the moment feel welcoming and inclusive for you and for others? All right, so with our loins girded, I don't actually know what that means, but I still use the phrase relatively often, but I don't know what it means. So I invite us to rise in body or in spirit, and online Zoom folks too. I invite you to greet each other well and warmly. For everyone who needed to step outside of your comfort zone to do that, thank you. Thank you. Jeff Gold offers our chalice lighting words this morning. The chalice is a symbol of this tradition, and each week when we light it, we're in some way naming what we're hoping it symbolizes, what it means for us today.
As we light the chalice today, may we be inspired by the words of bell hooks. Rarely, if ever, is anyone healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. Rarely, if ever, is anyone healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion.
Bell hooks words that Daryl recommended for our service this morning, and we send a piece of this light with our youngest members who have their own form of communion, Kids Connection, where they get to be community together in increasingly important ways. And we sing them on their way with gratitude for their leaders as well as for their presence.
Good morning, and a warm greeting to each of you here in the room and each of you on Zoom. I'm Carol Nimick, the worship associate for this morning, and I'm with Reverend Kevin and our guest, Daryl Grigsby, to explore the topic of inclusion. We all want to be included. This stems from being human. It is innately part of ourselves to seek connection for emotional, spiritual, and heart-mind needs. We desire inclusion, and we might experience it in family, a relationship, a neighborhood, at our work or play. Sometimes we look for inclusion and don't receive it. And sometimes we can't even find our way into that inclusionary place. The longing to be included is familiar because it is seated deeply within us. It feels tied to our very nature as social beings and is woven into our needs for survival, for connection, for love of self and love of one another. Where do I feel inclusion in my life, I ask? I think of a group with whom I've been meeting for over a decade. It is a soul collage group where we share imaginative work that takes us individually to a deep place. The feeling of inclusion comes for me from our mutual commitment to vulnerability and to being heard. I also think of times when I didn't feel included. A women's group I longed to be a part of, or a neighborhood connection I was shunned from. There are many. Those experiences left real wounds that are still alive today. At this point in my life, the experience of inclusion is ever more important. As I feel included, it stirs within me a desire to extend inclusion toward others. This desire is not just a sweet invitation to think of others, but a gut response in my body to stretch myself from thought to deed, to dissolve prejudice and judgments I may be carrying, and to take real action that brings inclusivity. Every day, this is a work of progress. Is my experience of inclusion a closed circle, or one that inspires me to be expansive? I know Daryl will offer a deeper look at the question, what is inclusion asking of us? I'm looking forward to experiencing a new understanding of inclusion. Our presence together right here, whether in the room or on Zoom, is hopefully a step toward ever widening inclusionary circles.
The opening words this morning are from James Baldwin. The day will come when you will trust you more than you do now, and you will trust me more than you do now, and we can trust each other. I really do believe that we can all become better than we are. I know that we can, but the price is enormous, and people are not yet willing to pay it.
With that invitation, we search our hearts in this weekly ritual of paying attention to what's mattering to us. I invite you to take a moment to feel into your own understanding, your own heart, your own thoughtfulness, your own prayers lately. Who is there? Who and what is on your mind and in your heart? and for what reasons? Before we enter the wordless part of our ritual, I would invite you to call out or type into the chat one piece of something that you're bringing. What's in your heart? Let me grab my computer.
God.
God this morning.
Family.
Family.
Mother Earth.
Mother Earth.
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
Connie's mom.
Connie's mom.
Joy.
Joy.
Chaos.
Sorry, chaos?
Chaos.
Chaos.
President.
President.
Healing.
Healing. One more time. Society.
Anxiety.
Anxiety.
Miracles.
Miracles.
Openness.
Openness is one I didn't hear. Distance.
Remembering.
Remembering.
Serenity.
Serenity.
Comfort.
Death. Comfort. Online. Understanding. Online. Immigrants. My mother.
Beauty.
Beauty. Overwhelmed. My right-wing friend. Dread. Feeling a little bit of hope amid onslaught and insanity. Maryland's celebration of another year. Trust. What hasn't been named yet that feels important? Faith, magic, love,
Family. Peace.
dance, community, peace, pain, springtime,
Music.
music. I would name all those who are in vulnerable positions and the way their vulnerability is heightened in recent times. And all of us who are less vulnerable in any of the ways that we are, and what our place may be to mitigate, to put ourselves between the harm and those people in the ways that we can. With all of that stirring, I invite us into this ritual. If you're new to it, there are stones here on the table and a chance to, if you're in the room, to take a stone and place it in the bowl of water. This very tactile, tangible symbol of what may be in our hearts in the stone, as well as the bowl symbolizing all that holds us, carries us. If you're on Zoom, there's a chance to type into the chat a piece of what's on your mind and heart if you haven't named it there already. Or if being less verbal is helpful, to put a 0 or an O as the equivalent of a stone. So you're bringing yourself to this community, even if what you carry is unnamed. I invite you, if it is your practice to pray, to surface your prayers in the midst of the ritual and the movement and other people coming forward. If it's your practice to look within, to listen for that still small voice in any form, I invite you to do that. If your practice is to be still, centered, I invite you to do that. And if you don't have a practice, I invite you simply to be quietly attentive to the moment, present to the moment, in this whole community of people sharing that moment together. It's a very full bowl. Understandably. For those who don't know, stones brought by members of the congregation, members and friends. So the stones already come from a heart and a soul and a being. And I was reminded as I watched Gene. Gene comes when he first gets here and takes a stone and holds it meanwhile, so that when he comes up at this point, there's some weight to that stone. Perhaps a practice you might want to consider if that appeals to you. The words of my colleague Julian Jamaica Soto to speak to this moment and the pieces in you that may not have been welcomed or included. I invite you to hear as much of it from whatever places feel important in you. Julian titles it, "You Are Not Wrong." I need you to know that there is nothing wrong with you if you find the world congealed and unwieldy. You were never meant to serve money, to give loyalty to unprincipled power, to spend your joy frantically soothing yourself in order to tend wounds of being constantly dehumanized. I need you to know that your sense of injury and anger is not overdeveloped. You are meant for love and beauty. You belong where you are known and where your future is not just a resource, but a promise, which you begin to fulfill by being unmistakably, irrevocably yourself. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and to sing, even if you're at home on Zoom. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a
Good morning, everyone. This is a reading that was suggested by our guest speaker today. It's from a book and writings by Howard Thurman in his book, In Search of Identity. Someday there will stand up in our midst one who will tell of a new sickness among the children. Children who, in delirium, cry for their brothers and sisters whom they have never known and from whom they have been cut off behind self-imposed barriers of their parents. Alarm will spread throughout the community, and it is already being felt. Slowly, the community is coming to realize it cannot feed forever on itself. It can only flourish when boundaries give way and admit the coming of others from beyond them, unknown and undiscovered kin. Then the wise among them will say, "What we have sought, we at last have found, our own sense of identity. We have now an established center out of which we can function with the ability to relate to others. We have now committed to our hearts and to our nervous systems a feeling of belonging so that our spirits are no longer isolated and afraid. We have lost our fear of our siblings, and we are no longer ashamed of ourselves and of who and what we are. So let us now go forth to save the land of our birth from the plague that first drove us into the will, the intention to quarantine and separate ourselves behind self-imposed walls. This is why we were born. We, all of us, belong to each other, and persons who shut themselves away diminish themselves. A person who shuts another away from himself destroys himself." And all the people said, "Amen."
Well, good morning. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm very happy to be here, to have been invited by actually one of my favorite people in the county, Kevin Tarsa. We've worked together on the Color Me Human board and on other things, and it's been my pleasure, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to see so many familiar and new faces. So, just so you know, last week, I was speaking at a Black Catholic parish in Oakland, and today I'm here at a Unitarian church. And not to brag, but I would venture to say that's the first time somebody has spoken at a Catholic church and then come to a Unitarian church, and probably the first time somebody left a Catholic church to come to a Unitarian church. But it's my pleasure to be here, and I have to say, you know, when they talked about the theme of inclusion, and I knew I was coming to a Unitarian church, I mean, I was kind of thinking, well, this is going to be like being at a dental hygienist convention to talk about the importance of flossing. Because I mean, that's why people come to a Unitarian church, and that's why people stay in a Unitarian church. And so, you know, I feel like, talk about preaching to the choir, this is it. Although with anything worth doing right, there's always the deeper levels that we can go. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Also, the last time I was in a Unitarian church speaking, I was thinking about this, it was in 1989, and I was at the First Unitarian Church of Los Angeles, talking about my then second book, For the People, Black Socialists in the United States, Africa, and the Caribbean, and they invited me to come talk about that. I will say that was the only church I was invited to speak at about that book. And the one thing I do want to let you all know on the theme of inclusion, I hate to be the one to let you all know, but this theme borders on being ill-advised and inappropriate and perhaps even illegal, according to pronouncements from our government. But I did want to talk about the theme is the heart and art of inclusion. And I mentioned the heart and art because I wanted to focus on the art because inclusion is not a science. There's no formula or a definite set of experiments that leads to what's right. But it's an ever-flowing and ever-changing experience that we must continue always to follow. But I did want to keep in mind, as we pursue this issue, that the current tone of our government that purportedly represents the will of the people currently bombards us with division, exclusion, blame, and degradation of human beings. And you have to kind of be aware of this. Steve Bannon, who's a self-proclaimed white supremacist, often brags that the strategy is to flood the zone so that us, you, the public, the media, are too overwhelmed to react and respond. So, on the theme of inclusion, our challenge is going to be, over the next 4 years, how to absorb this barrage of news without grief, depression, or being immobilized by sadness. And I'll just cite a few things, not to dwell on it, but just to deal with the reality that we have. So the president stood up and proclaimed that there were only 2 genders, and people jumped up and applauded. And then a helicopter and a plane collide, and people are dead in the Potomac River. And the first thing the president says is, I don't have all the facts, but this accident was probably caused because a black or brown or a woman who was not qualified to do something was the cause of it. And then if you saw the Episcopal bishop at the National Cathedral, who asked the president and the vice president to have mercy on human beings who are afraid, he demands an apology, and his supporters say she should be added to the deportation list. And further, I don't know if you guys saw this, but now the House is considering a resolution, and this is not the only thing I'm talking about, so don't think this is going to be a barrage of all this. But we have to start with it because it's our reality. But the House of Representatives is considering a resolution, H.R. 59, that condemns the Bishop of Washington. It says, actually, this is the text of it, whereas the National Prayer Service is a longstanding tradition in which the United States publicly affirms dependence upon God and prays for the success of our president, and then whereas Trump and Vance were there, whereas the Right Reverend Mary Ann Edgar Booty, bishop leading the inaugural prayer service, used her position inappropriately, promoting the political bias instead of advocating the full counsel of biblical teaching. Therefore, be it resolved that the House of Representatives, that the sermon given at the National Prayer Service on January 21st was a display of political activism, and the House condemns her distorted message. So what's so crazy about that is, so we brag about being a Christian nation, and they call her message distorted, and all she did at the end was call for mercy. And the word mercy is like 296 times in the Hebrew scriptures and another 43 times in the Christian scriptures. That's like 341 times the word mercy is in the scriptures. You won't find gay and lesbian in the scriptures that often. You won't find abortion in the scriptures that often, but mercy is, and our House of Representatives sees that as a distorted message. And in addition to that, we are in the midst of removing funding for research into deadly viruses, fermenting youth in poor areas of the country, providing medicine for children with AIDS in Africa. And on Friday, there was a big memo from the Attorney General saying that they're going to revive the death penalty, despite the fact that the death penalty has proven 2 things. One is innocent people get executed, And the second thing is, if you take a map of where executions are most prevalent and a map of where lynchings were most common in the US history, it's the same map. It's like unbelievable. And yet this is a restoration of the form of justice. And the scholar, Hannah Arendt, wrote a book, The Origins of Totalitarianism. But she talks about there are three components to it. One is propaganda, two is violence, but the third is interesting. It's about isolation and loneliness. And that's why inclusion is so important, because inclusion really would be an antidote to the isolation and loneliness, because the whole point of this barrage is to have us feel so immobilized and helpless that we don't do anything about anything. So in a way, our gathering today is in direct contradiction to that. And we are committed to inclusion. Is this still working now? Oh, okay. So I don't pop it. Thanks. Thanks, man. I'm okay. Thanks, man. But we're committed to inclusion because our heart says that it's right. And that's why I mentioned the heart and art of inclusion. So Howard Thurman also wrote, and we heard from him earlier, that the human heart is a source of love. And relative to inclusion, the only refuge for a person is in another person's heart. Therefore, I must make of my heart a swinging door. And that's what I wanted to talk about for this morning, is to continue with the theme of our heart as a swinging door that provides refuge. So the beauty of a swinging door is that it can swing both ways. So it can come inward, so you let people into your heart, and to a great extent into your community. And we heard earlier today that oftentimes people who have been excluded have some bitterness about having been excluded. And so what I wanted to encourage us all is the extent to which we open our hearts to people who in the past have been excluded, to also absorb the anger they may have and not explain away or dismiss or even be responsible for the anger, but simply to embrace it and hold it. One of the things that growing up African American, I'm from Washington, D.C., as you heard, and I grew up when D.C. was like mostly African American, like 80%, then called Chocolate City. And I had, it was a great growing up experience because I went to all black schools and learned about black history, and people looked out for each other on the community block. And so I have a lot of pride in that. And I've also had a pretty good life in terms of having had a job and a career and a family. But yet, like a lot of African Americans, I do have a simmering anger about injustice. And sometimes people get freaked out about that because I've had, when I was working and I would sometimes talk about issues, some people would say, I didn't realize you were so angry because you're such a nice person. But I say that you can't care about people and not at some point be angry by how they're treated. And especially even without the reversal of things like DEI and CRT, which really, in my mind, only address the issue of racism like this much. It's not like we did a big reversal of the racism in the country. It's like this much, and yet we even want to roll that back. But even without those things, inequality in America is unbelievable. So the average Caucasian family, when you take all their wealth and just subtract the debts, I've heard that their wealth is like $13 billion. And if you do that same thing for the African American community, take all the assets and subtract the debts, it's accumulation wealth of about zero. So economic inequality is foundational to our country. And there's some other things that make me angry. When I was mass incarceration, for example, is one of these things. So when I was in San Luis Obispo, I volunteered for an organization called Get on the Bus, which connected children with their incarcerated parent. And it was my first time doing this. And San Luis Obispo is much like our county here in terms of being majority white. And so most of the volunteers were well-meaning Caucasian people from churches and schools who came out to help with the event. And when I went to go meet the bus coming from Los Angeles to go to the men's colony in San Luis Obispo, I'm standing there and there's all white people behind me. And the bus doors open up and everybody who gets off the bus is black and brown. And I'm thinking, what the heck is wrong with our system? And what is the image that's being left with the people behind me, like all the criminals are black and brown? And so the whole issue of mass incarceration is a real problem. I also want to say this about our beloved county here in terms of things that make me angry. So I've been here 6 years, not that long time, and I know several families of color that have moved out of this area because of the way their children are treated in the school districts. I mean, and I probably know like 6 or 7 people, and I don't even know that many people because 2 of the years that we lived here were under the pandemic shutdown. But if you have to pack up your house and leave where you live because of how people are treated, I mean, it's one thing to be teased. I mean, all kids have a little bit of streak, but when it comes to racial bullying, which happens all the time, we just heard something the other day about this, to where the parents, out of love for their kids, move them out of here. That's really unfortunate. So one of the things I will say, here's an advantage of being an African American. I will say this, and it comes from W.B. Du Bois' 1903 book, Souls of Black Folk, because he talks about if you're African American in the U.S., you're a Negro, is the language, and an American, and you have the anger of being a Negro, the way you're treated, and you have the hopes of being included as an American, and both of those feelings are in your body at the same time. And so really one of the beauties of that is you do learn to live with that anger and not have it consume you, but have it be a fuel to have you be involved in some work for justice. So that's the challenge, to be, when you're angry and when you absorb other people's anger, to don't be immobilized by it. So the other thing that's significant is that the heart, Thurman talks about, opens both ways. That means it can also open outward. So it means going to places and initiating encounters and engaging in activities that puts you in contact with people whose lives and circumstances are different than your own. One of my favorite quotes is by the Black theologian James Cone, who's now dead, who wrote in 1968 in his book, Black Theology and Black Power. This is one of my favorite quotes of all time because I think it puts in context a lot of misunderstandings that people have about race. He says, the father of Black theology says, being Black in America has very little to do with skin color. To be Black means that your heart, your soul, and your body are where the dispossessed are. So the real questions are, where is your identity? Where is your being? Does it lie with the oppressed Blacks or the white oppressor? And I would imagine you can take that same concept and apply it to LGBTQ humans and transhumans and immigrants or any other group that is marginalized, because you can put your heart and soul and body where they are. So in 1848, the great Henry David Thoreau went to jail for not paying his taxes because he thought the Mexican War was a war of hostile aggression that's still in other countries' land, and also a war to hopefully extend the slave states to the west and the south. And when he went to jail, Ralph Waldo Emerson came to bail him out, and Emerson said, "Henry, what are you doing in there?" And Thoreau quietly replied, "Ralph, what are you doing out there?" Which means that Henry David Thoreau, had put himself on the side of those that suffer. So that's something that we all are called to do. So I'm in the middle of reading one of my problems that I have many actually. One of them is being an undisciplined reader. So I have a stack of books and oh, that's really great. And I'll read from that one and I'll pick up another one and start with that one. However, right now I'm reading Education in Black and White, Miles Horton and the Highlander Center Vision for Social Justice. Powerful book. So Miles Horton was born to a poor white family in Appalachia. And during the Great Depression, there were families without jobs or food or security. Racial violence and lynching was common. And he saw the pain of Black and white families in Tennessee and felt it was unbearable. And he was angry, almost livid, about the disrespect heaped upon poor whites and blacks in Appalachia, in Tennessee. So he, in 1932, him and a person named Don West, got together to create a place where regular people of all races could talk and learn from each other and get to the heart of issues of race and class and of poverty and discrimination. So they founded a school in 1932 in the town of Summerfield, Tennessee, and the fundamental idea was that within the people themselves were the skills and resources and wisdom for self-determination, self-respect, and dignity. They didn't need teachers to teach them that. They just had to come together and pull it out of themselves. So in Highlander was a place that people could be nurtured and that brought to the surface. So among the people who attended there was Rosa Parks and future Congressman John Lewis and Martin Luther King, and the great Ella Baker was one of the presenters there. And interestingly enough, 4 months after attending Highlander is when Rosa Parks refused to move to the back of the bus. And John Lewis, when he left there, he said that he was on fire, and he meant by being on fire that he was going to stay on fire, and he was going to refuel those who were already on fire or whose light had gone out. And this was in the midst of constant, if you can imagine, in Tennessee from the 30s through the 60s. In fact, the school still exists today. There were constant threats of violence and of burnings and night attacks. In fact, they were considered to be illegal and ruled to go out of business, which they just basically moved. But the lesson that Miles Horton had, and this is just one individual who came together to bring other people along with him, the main lesson was that the people came together, and they also came together not as victims, but as agents of their own lives and people capable of fighting for their own freedom, which is the complete opposite of what the current administration intends to do to you and me and others. So the antidote to that is to be like Miles Horton and to keep opening our heart inward and outward. And I would imagine that in some respects, Miles Horton never spoke of inclusion because it just became part of what they did all the time. And so it wasn't a program or a vision, but really was a reality about what kind of life that they were going to lead. I'll just close with a couple of comments. I don't know if you've seen the book by Valerie Cower called See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love. But one of the statements in there is, "You are a part of me that I do not yet know," which basically talks about how some of the same readings we heard earlier today talk about our fullness as a human person derives from the fact of our ability to connect and relate to other people. And the Catholic nun Norma Pimentel, one of my heroes who works in the Rio Grande Valley, in Mexico and in the US, her quote was, "The criticism of the bad is to do more of the good." So both of those things have to be kind of what we have to hold on to and not become so worn down, which is easy to do. I don't know how you can listen to anything and not go a little bit crazy and not be a teeny bit depressed, because it's pretty unbelievable, the barrage of it. However, to keep in mind what Valerie Cower talked about you are part of me, I do not yet know, and what Catholic nun Sister Norma Pimentel said, criticism of the bad is to do more of the good. That is so critical. And I'll just close with this. I once had the pleasure of hearing Bell Hooks in person, and I don't know if you ever had a chance to really see her live, but she looked like how do I say this, a nice, calm grandmother. However, she was really a ball of fire. But she, in this one message she gave at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, she said, we live in a racist, and this is before our current president actually, we live in a racist, patriarchal, and homophobic society, and we're either a perpetuator or a beneficiary or a victim. But regardless of any of those labels, the main thing we have to do is to take responsibility to make sure that society doesn't continue to exist that way. So her overriding theme was not that we stay in the label of victim or beneficiary or perpetrator, but that we take responsibility. And so that's what I wanted to close with. Bell Hook's admonition to us that regardless of the situation around us all, to take responsibility for making our society better and different, which is why we're here. And thank you guys for having me this morning.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you. Our offering each Sunday provides an opportunity to give both to the workings of our UUCM community and also to a local organization who shares similar values as they contribute to our community. 50% of the offering this month will support Community Beyond Violence, whose mission is to heal the trauma of sexual assault and domestic violence by providing crisis intervention, safety, advocacy, and education to survivors and to our community. This morning, Jessica Nunn-Provost, the Executive Director of Community Beyond Violence, is here to share more. Jessica.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me here today and including Community Beyond Violence in your efforts. It is so appreciated. Thank you. I thank you for sharing our mission. Our vision at Community Beyond Violence is a future free of interpersonal violence where everyone in our community lives in a culture of safety and personal dignity. And how we get there is via our free and confidential services. That includes an emergency response for sexual assault exams at hospitals, a 90-day stay at our confidential free shelter, which is very importantly to know, pet-friendly, because that's an obstacle that keeps people from feeling like they're ready to leave and feeling like they can take their entire family. So I always love to highlight that it's pet-friendly. We also offer legal advocacy and accompaniment to help people as they navigate the justice systems in our community when they are seeking alternatives to, and looking for some remedies to the violence that they've been experiencing. And that actually includes a legal program with limited scope attorney connections so that we're able to help people get the actual representation that they need, which is something I'm really proud of that we've introduced just in the last year. And we actually also offer case management for housing and advocacy around housing. We all know the housing crisis and the people experiencing homelessness are some of our most vulnerable in our community, and we offer really meaningful connections in the housing world like that. We offer peer counseling and support groups. And then finally, we offer prevention education in our community. So if you would like more information or education, we go out to community groups and we try to make sure that we are really wide-ranging with how we reach the community. I just wanted to share some really impactful numbers because I think it tells a powerful story. In 2024, 2,363 crisis line calls were answered, providing a lifeline when it was needed most. We had 3,398 nights of shelter, offering families a warm bed and a fresh start. And then we offered 703 unduplicated different survivors, adult survivors, most who have had dependent children with them. We've served them at our service center. So that service center is for everybody who may not be in a position to make a decision to come to a shelter, but they're wanting support around the domestic or sexual violence they're experiencing. And so we make sure that we have a center they can come to for all of these supports, and it's not contingent upon coming into shelter. 24 hours a day, we are available for survivors in Nevada County, and our hotline is available to absolutely anybody who is experiencing domestic and sexual violence, but it's also open to the folks who care about those people and want to know how to help. So I always want to encourage people, if they're looking for a conversation about how to support a loved one, that is a great use of our hotline as well. And I really, really encourage people who want to learn more to call us. And I won't give you the number because I have brochures on the way out that you will be very welcome to take if you would like. And it's got our 24-hour number on there. And I really encourage you, if you would like more information, we would happily provide you more information, send you more information. I just really, really want to make such a meaningful difference in our community through our services. And the inclusion today, the discussion around inclusion, is really paramount to the work that we're doing. So being able to come in here and all over our community to be able to share our work being done and you supporting our work is such a coordinated part of our community's solution to domestic violence and sexual assault. So I really, really do thank you for the meaningful impact that you're all having. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And there are brochures right by the front door as you leave. Greeters, will you come forward? The following slide will share other ways to give. Thank you for your gifts to our church and to the community beyond violence. Both groups dedicated to the safety, advocacy, and support to every individual in the ripples of our community in need of care. We dedicate these gifts as we offer them freely, so all may feel safe and healed. Thank you.
I love the way people hum along or sing along a little bit with music that they know. It has a good feel to me. Thanks for the music, Toby, very much. Yeah. Daryl, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad. And grateful. And I know from the inside how much spouses make a difference. So Leslie, welcome as well. Yeah, thank you. Our AV folks, Steve and Cypress, thank you. I missed thanking them last week. Thank you so much for being there in the back. Carol, thanks for being our worship associate today. To Eileen for being chat host week after week, although she's going to be gone next week. So looking for some substitute chat hosts, looking at you Zoom folks in particular, but anybody, please consider that. Shanti for the setting. Those very dramatic candle pieces are beautiful, aren't they? Yeah. To our greeters who make such a difference, Lori and Carol and Carl and everyone else who chipped in today. To Gary and Jeff and Chuck for being readers this morning. To Gwen for being our lay pastoral care person. Gwen, where are you in case someone is trying to find you? I think Gwen's in the Channing room, actually. She opened up a space. To Corey and Cheryl, if you know Corey Silva or Cheryl Spalding, who are working with our young ones, please thank them when you see them. It's a really beautiful thing that they do. And for those who are guiding refreshments today, Katz and Janet and Carol, thank you. A few things, a book group meets today, Women's Circle meets on Monday, our Joys and Sorrows, really beautiful meditative service that Sophia leads. And we're doing a half hour of music beforehand from 6:30 to 7. By the time we get to 7, we're all... And so it makes for a very deep time. My friend Annette Dunklin on cello, and I'll be on piano, will be offering that music this week. Arts and Crafts Circle on Friday, a chance to drop in and work on your stuff while you're in community. Also coming up, Interfaith Food. There's a group that goes to Interfaith Food Ministry, of which this congregation is a member, second Tuesday of every month from 2 to 4. A great way to do some good in the community, and they could use volunteers. It helps Keith if you let him know. So if you just contact Justice through this address, that helps him plan for numbers. I'm doing a series of history sessions that will start in late February. Take a look. There's a Tuesday evening option and a Thursday afternoon option, both online and in person. So there's a chance to mix and match those even. And the pledge season is coming. This is the way people, members and friends of the congregation, support the community. And that will happen through some cottage meetings coming up in March. So members and friends will have received some invitations and others will later. So feel free to please sign up for one of those Sundays. There'll be some catered food for that, so we want to have the right amount for you. And of course, the website. For those who are new in particular, I encourage you to go exploring the website and see what else is there, or reach out to any of us as well. For our closing song, I am really aware, Daryl, of how this song, I think one of the reasons this song is so powerful, so consistently, is that it is a song that holds both the anger and the hope in it. There's more love somewhere. We're going to keep on until we find it. Yeah. So I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and to sing with that in mind, the anger, the hope, and that invitation to do something that moves the world toward the inclusiveness that we see as so important and valuable.
Somewhere
thank you all again, and I just wanted to close with just that basic theme that you continue to gather and continue to do what you're doing and keep your heart swinging both ways. Don't let it get frozen in or out, but keep it flowing, because I do believe in the end there's more love than there is hate, and there are more good people than there are not good. We just have to be more out and visible. So thank you all.
And with that, we share these good words with each other to send us on our way and remind us that we're not alone. We are not alone. We are connected in this. So together, this community benediction, let us together carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. If you're here, please join us for refreshments and a cost to Daryl, and we'll see you next Sunday, for there's a place for us.
I was trying to